Hi, my name is Craig Collins, and I'm the CEO of Yes You Can Read Now, and I've got some exciting news to share with you. You're probably wondering how I found you. Well, I have an incredible marketing team with Jeremy Howry, and he's with Enlightened Marketing LLC, and he found you for me. And most likely what happened was that you have asked about reading, or you've asked about dyslexia, or Aspergers Syndrome and reading, or possibly you're interested in learning to read in 2.5 hours, and that's what we do. Here's our website, www.universalreadingmethod.com, and at the bottom you'll see that we guarantee we'll teach you to read in 2.5 hours. Yes, 2.5 hours. Isn't that amazing? I'm excited to share this with you. And we have transformed over 1,000 people, and they are very happy to tell you their story. And on our website, you'll be able to listen to and watch some videos and read some testimonials, and hopefully it'll convince you to try us out, because this could be the first day of the rest of your life. Okay, so welcome. I want to tell you some stories. I want you to think about it, as that, do you have dyslexia? If someone told you you have dyslexia. Maybe you're a mom and you have dyslexia. Maybe you're dad. You might be a son or a daughter. And if you do have and have been told that you can't read and you're never going to learn to read because you have this amazing problem called dyslexia, well, it's not true. It's absolutely not true. And if you're a teacher out there, you know that you've had a certain instruction that's taught you to teach reading to your students, and you try diligently, and your conclusion is that they just don't want to learn, or they just can't do it, and they don't understand, and they have an attitude problem, or they've got some sort of brain injury that keeps them from understanding what you're telling them. And it's not that at all. The reading methods that you're teaching and we're taught to teach are somewhat archaic, and you do have students that you teach your reading method to, and they appear to become readers, but they've memorized all their words. And as you know, you have multiple rules they have to learn, and riddles and stories and things like that to get them to pronounce it. And we teach them everything in 2.5 hours. That means that you can put our video on in your classroom to the whole class at one time. We had 4 classes of 39 students. Those students had parents at home that didn't read English and didn't speak English. There was a translator that introduced us to the class when we began. And we put the video on, 4 classes, 39 students. And the teacher just sat in the back and made sure that everybody was somewhat, participating, but didn't really say much. Just kind of pointed them back to the video and let them learn to read. And I was surprised. I had no idea. It was the first time we'd ever taught with a video, and I'd always taught myself. And I felt confident I could teach people, but could a video teach them? Well, the video of the Universal Reading Method taught all 156 students, 4 classes, to read 475 multi-syllable words from the GED, college-level words. And when they began, most of the students were at a 4th grade reading level, which is obviously not reading multi-syllable words from the GED. So that was our beginning of knowing that we could teach this group. And it makes sense, if I can make you believe and you understand that I can teach one student with the Universal Reading Method, then you can imagine if the person can see the screen sitting next to the one person, and then there's 39 students, or maybe 100 students, and they can hear what I'm instructing, and then they can then speak and repeat what I tell them to repeat, and they do it in unison, then everyone's going to have the same experience, aren't they? Everyone's going to learn to read in 2.5 hours. And then we do a post-test where we have them read those words. In the beginning we do a pre-test, and that pre-test gives them an idea that they probably have memorized words. So they have words that they see, and they're sight words, and they recognize those words because they memorize them. But when it comes to the words that are on that pre-test, and they're not on their list of words that they've memorized, they don't have a clue. But at the end, they read 475 multi-syllable words. So it's quite exciting. I mean, just amazing. And you might say it's a miracle, and I'm in love with that word right now, because I have been very, very fortunate to be able to experience over 1,000 miracles right before my eyes. The transformation is amazing. The increase in self-esteem. But it's not just self-esteem because they have a consciousness that they can read now. There's something happens in the universal reading method that shows that we're possibly rewiring the brain in some way. And it's so fascinating that the University of California at San Diego has decided to do a neuroscience study and brain imaging all the students, and then looking at the data and letting us know exactly what's going on in the brain when we teach the reading method, because it's so miraculous for us. Well, let me tell you a story, or bring to your consciousness, what it's like not to be able to read. And you may be watching this because you can't, or you have students that can't. And what it's like is that they look at the words and they're all scrambled and they don't make sense. And we had a student who was like sitting, and he had his hands over his eyes, peeking through his eyes. He wouldn't look at my brother, who was teaching him without a video. And he was like, totally shamed. His father was sitting right next to him. He was angry. He didn't like the words learning to read or reading method. He'd done that before, and every time he did that, he failed. If I could change the word reading, if I could change learn to read or instruction, I would take those words out, because they have a memory for that student that says, that wasn't a fun thing to do. That wasn't a fun thing to do. I had a student one time, and he told me that he was so afraid of having to read in the circle at school that he pulled the alarm, and everybody had to go out. The whole school had to go out on the playground, and of course missed the time when they were going to have to read in a circle. The student that I told you about, with his hands crossed over his eyes and peeking, ended up, not only did he read the 475 words, but he went into my living room and he found a book and he pulled it out and he wanted to read that book. So we let him read that book, and he read it perfectly. And it was a story about a father and son who weren't getting along very well. And when his father said, well, do you know what you're reading? He said, yes, Dad, this is a story about you and I. We don't get along very well, and I think it's because I couldn't read before, but I can now, so maybe we'll get along better. Such a sweet boy. Okay, well then he ran out to his car and he got a book that the teacher had given him and said, you've got to learn how to read this book, and you have to read it by tomorrow. And he didn't know if the reading method would work and he would be able to read that book, or could he just read the book he chose? He wasn't sure. So he started reading the book. And so he put his finger underneath the words and he started reading the book, and he could read that book. But in the middle he stopped, he put his finger down and he says, how come the teacher gave me this book? It's a dumb book. It's not interesting. I'm not interested in it at all. I can say those words and I understand what it's saying. It's like for a little boy, a little kid. I'm 12. I don't want to read this book. And so he picked up the book that he had been reading before and said, can I keep reading this book? And he was interested because it told him a little bit more about his relationship with his dad. And then his dad was amazed, and he was shaking his head in amazement. So it was quite amazing. This is the kind of experiences I have all the time. I mean, everybody I teach has a transformation experience. And we are just so pleased to be here with you. I mean, I'm so thankful to Jeremy Howie for finding you. And I hope you're really excited for finding us and hearing more about us. Now, there are other people that are very interesting and that we've taught to read, and they have Aspergers Syndrome. And some of you may have Aspergers Syndrome or know someone who does. It's a misdiagnosed problem for many, many students. And often people are not told or aware that they have Aspergers Syndrome, a type of autism. But we don't care. We teach anybody. We teach everybody. It doesn't matter what you have. I actually see and experience the different ways that people think as being fascinating and incredible and brilliant. Actually brilliant. To be someone with dyslexia is to be able to figure out puzzles Often you're good at math. You see the bigger picture. You just can't read. Imagine how brilliant you must be to be able to get through this world and not without being able to understand and see and read words. I mean, that would make you pretty smart if you were handicapped with that inability to make sense of sounds and letters and words. So we add your reading to it. Now, not only are you brilliant the way you were before, but you also can read. You sometimes wonder, I think the people that talk to students, especially young people, they think they're the only one in the class, and they're not. It's like a huge number of people. Can you guess how many people in the United States that are adults who can't read? Well, we went through a study. I found a study that went into great detail and analyzed exactly who and where and how many. And they were able to assess that there were 90 million adults in the United States. Now that figure changes with different studies, but 90 million adults just happens to be the same number of people that didn't vote last year in the election. I mean, that's an amazing fact. 90 million adults did not want to vote, didn't show up for voting. But you can imagine if they had to stand in that voting booth and they were looking at that very complicated ballot and trying to find something that made sense to them, and they really hadn't read anything before, and they were not trusting what was on the television. I don't know, but nonetheless they didn't show up. So 90 million adults didn't do that. They didn't show up and they didn't vote. And then the children that are coming out of high school, what do you think that figure is? 51%. 51% of the people the kids coming out of high school are coming out of high school with a 4th grade reading level. So think of the crime rate. Think of the populations of young people in the juvenile detention facilities. Think of people in prison. Think of our crime rate. And those people can read. 51%. That's a large number. And they want to go to junior college or community college. They go in and they give you a test. And when they give you the test and you don't pass the test, then you have to take either remedial classes, continue in the way you were when you were in high school, and you still can't read. So we fixed that. We do. We absolutely fixed that. In 2.5 hours. The universal reading method in 2.5 hours. And it's simple. It's easy. You watch a video for a little less than an hour. And in that last hour, you're exposed to, well, here's a question even for people who can read and reading instructors. When you have a vowel in the word, there are vowels in each word, and they're either long or short. And so when you look at them, how do you know if it's long or short? Well, we're going to teach you that, and it's simple. I mean, easy. I mean, like you just go, one long, two short, and you're just going, oh my gosh, this is simple. And then we're going to teach you all the sounds, and we're not going to give you a bunch of rules to memorize. And some reading methods require 444 rules to memorize. I mean, do you imagine why someone has trouble reading when they look at a word and the word comes out with 444 rules they have to select from to be able to pronounce that, when we just tell them how to pronounce it? I don't think there's ever been a reading method that's ever just said, here's what an A sounds like, this is what a B sounds like, this is a vowel sounds. What do they look like when they're together? B-A, is that bay or ba? I mean, no one tells anybody that. So we do. We tell them, and we explain it very simply. And at the end, they've learned the exceptional sounds. They know when a vowel is long or short. It's an amazing experience, absolutely amazing experience to be able to teach people to read with our universal reading method. I told you about the people that have Aspergers Syndrome. Aspergers Syndrome is a type of autism. And some people with Asperger's Syndrome can read, but the ones that can't read, I had a young man named Harris. He was in Minnesota. I love Harris. And he tried to convince me he could read by looking at a 4th grade primer, and he couldn't do it. I mean, he told me the story, and I got a kick out of the fact that he knew the story and could make it up, but he couldn't read it. So we sat down, and in the middle of it, he felt something going on in his brain. And in the past, what was going on in his brain had been that he was having a autistic meltdown, and he was afraid. And so I assured him that he was fine, and he went upstairs and washed off his face. I said, come back, you're doing a really good job. He came back, he didn't feel flipped out, or didn't feel like he was melting down. And he came back, and then he finished the reading method. His mom came in just after he had read 475 words, college level words again. Yeah, 475. Now remember, Harris couldn't read from a 4th grade primer. Had to make up the story, and he wanted the people to believe he could, but he couldn't. And now he was reading 475 words, and he read all those words with his mom. And when he did, he put his arm on her shoulder, and she looked at it like, that's Harris touching me on the shoulder. And he put his other arm around and on the right side and pointed at the words, and he read those words to her. And as he did, she realized he could read all those words. And how would that change his life? Well, Harris is now going away to college. He has a girlfriend. I believe he's driving a car. He went to the prom. He's emancipating. He can live away from home. He wants to be a Christian minister. I mean, he really, really changed a lot in 2.5 hours. That's what I want for you. I want you to change in 2.5 hours, or your son, or your daughter, or your husband, or a friend. And think about, you're a person who's working, you have a job, and you've taken a job in a factory or in construction, and you would like to move up. You'd like to be in charge. You'd like to teach other people. You've been there quite a while. You'd like an increase in income. Well, now you can go back after 2.5 hours, next day, and show that you can read everything and let it be known to your employer that you have changed and that you are qualified with all the time and experience you have to move up and to make more money and to become manager of other people that you work with. And you're already kind of a leader, and then that you can't pass the test, you can't read all the screens, there's a whole bunch of challenges. So we have wonderful stories and experiences to share with you about people who are working and now can move up in a grade in their working environment. I'm really excited. I traveled around across the United States. I can't say around the world. I didn't go all the way around the world. I wanted to, but I didn't go all the way around the world. I went up to Canada. I went across the United States. I went to the UK. I went to Hawaii. I was on the west coast of the United States. I was on the east coast. I had a wonderful time finding people who were challenged with reading, and in libraries and in their homes and in different places, I taught them the universal reading method in 2.5 hours. And then we put it online. And now we're teaching people online. You can go online. I mean, you can do this in your home. Nobody's around. Just make sure you do exactly what I tell you. Make sure you take the 15-minute walk. It's key. I mean, it's the most important part of the reading method, is to take a walk for 15 minutes so that your mind can consolidate the information you learned in that first video. And then when you come back, study it for 15 minutes. It's going to be review sheets. So study it the whole time, though, because it's not about knowing. It's about planting the information on your brain so you can get to it again. So the more times you say it over and over again in that 15 minutes, then you're going to have it forever. And it is forever. Our students never stop reading. They just go off and start reading. And then there's another population I'm very interested in. People that are incarcerated. They're both juveniles and they're adults. And many of those can't read, and they are confined. They live behind walls. And being able to read allows them in their mind, as they read, to be able to leave those walls for the first time and to be able to see what's going on outside and to have fantasies in life in their reading that they never had in their own living experience. And then when they are able to leave the prison and go into the world, there's a problem with recidivity. There's a problem with students coming back. And it's really, really, not students, but prisoners coming back. And it's very, very important that when they leave, that they don't have to come back. And when they can read, they can get a job. And when they can read, they can learn more things about what the outside world is like. And they understand more, and they can get around a lot easier. And as they can read, they don't necessarily return to the gangs that they were a part of or the criminal activity that they were involved with, because they can do something different. They can enter into society. They can even vote. Well, I don't know. Maybe people that have been in prison can't vote, but they can definitely participate. So I share this with you with a big smile, and again, I'm going to show you this. And it's www.universalreadingmethod.com, and yes, it's guaranteed. You're going to have it for 30 days, so you can look at it as much as you want. You can share it with your little brother, or your big sister. Your parents can do it with you, and you all will be on top of reading like you've never had before. I want you to know that brilliance is often inherited. So when you're a brilliant dyslexic or Aspergers Syndrome person, you may have a mom or dad or relative in your family that has also lived in a challenged way, and they can be freed from that experience, that challenging, I'm dumb, I'm stupid feeling, and stand up and be counted. Well, I really enjoyed this statement, and we're going to be marketing everywhere, and so tell a friend, and go on our website, and even look at our affiliate. We have an affiliate program where you too can have a URL with under your name, and you can turn people on, and we're going to pay you for introducing people to the Universal Reading Method. Well, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to let you see this one more time. I hope that you can see it. www.universalreadingmethod.com, and yeah, it's guaranteed. Yeah, doesn't work for you, we'll give you your money back. I've never had to do that. I've never had to do that. That's amazing. Thank you. Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.